Welcome to the Weekly Squeak, your weekly geeky squeak with me, as always, Chris Chinchilla. I hope everybody is well. It's okay here if you're watching on video. I'm still figuring a few things out. I'm going to have a slightly funky angle today. And one of my posters fell down. I'm still about to fix that too. I have actually no links for the week. I'm not sure what I've been doing the past week. Obviously not reading anything interesting. But I do have a great interview with Brian Rue of Rollbar, who is probably up there in the top 2 of my interviews of the year with the best, coolest backgrounds. Probably up there with Lyndon Tibbetts of IFT from a few weeks ago. He also looks a little bit like a rock star, which is, I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. Anyway, so I'm just going to get straight to the interview, and I'll see you on the other side for some updates from me. Enjoy.
So I'm Brian Rue, co-founder and CEO at Rollbar. Rollbar is a continuous code improvement platform. We aim to help developers build software quickly and painlessly. The fact is, for most developers, building software is neither quick nor painless. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to help. The way we think about things is that one of the most fundamental problems with code is errors. And when it comes to improving code, that starts with improving and understanding the errors. So we built a suite of products and solutions that help developers understand, discover, predict, solve errors as fast as possible.
So the kind of broad observability, metrics, error reporting, APM space is quite wide, and there's various different implementations. Where does Rollbar fit into that space?
Yeah, so kind of think about it. There's the trajectory of the history has been there's been monitoring, which is kind of about, hey, let's gather the most important data that we can ask questions ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Then there's been the move to observability, which is kind of saying let's gather all the data so we can ask questions later. And the next thing after that is can we go from just having the data to actually having insights and being able to act on that data? When we think about kind of what the observability players are trying to do is say, hey, we're going to get the data for all the things. We're going to get everything from try to cover the whole gamut from ops all the way to dev. In actuality, most of those players are strongest on the ops side. So it's strongest on infrastructure data. It's understand our system, servers, host level things. And they're really not as strong at the code level side. So the approach that we take with Rollbar is to both get that data at the code level as well as provide the ability to act on that data at the code level.
So just to go into that a little bit more, so is Rollbar one of the products that I forget the correct technical term that kind of gives you like stack traces and things like that when you get errors, or is it a level above that or below, or what if you log an error for me, what do I see? I guess is an easier way to ask that question.
Yeah, so the kind of the layers in the stack for us starts with getting the data in the first place. So the data that we care most about is errors. When we want to get data about an error, we're getting the stack trace, the exception class, the error message, and then as much context as possible around that error. So what were the local variables in the stack trace? What was the request? Who was the user? What other kind of business transaction data might be around that? So that's kind of the first layer. The next layer is understanding what that error means. And the key part of that is being able to make the decision, are 2 errors the same or different? So when I have error A and error B, are these the same real thing, or are they different things? Yep. And when you can do that at scale, now you can take millions of errors a day and turn that into a list of 18 different problems you have, of which one of those is a new bug today. And that's what a kind of infrastructure, like where is the code running standpoint. So the primary way that developers use Rollbar is by adding RSCKs into their code. So what that means is kind of wherever the code is running, as long as it can talk to the internet, it can talk to Rollbar. So that could be on your laptop, it could be in Saging, it could be on your production servers in Amazon or Google or Microsoft, it could be a mobile device, a browser, it's wherever the code is, that works.
Okay. And do you get much insight into the other levels of a stack, like databases and things like that, or is it mostly just focusing on the programming language?
So we're focused on looking at, because we're sitting inside the application, we see what the application sees. So
Okay.
what does that process see, right? So like
Yeah.
if you're talking database, you might see, hey, database was down, but we don't know why. We just know the database was down.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so what does Rollbar add on top of just a normal quote unquote stack trace?
So I think the kind of the two things from a data perspective is typically if you're just logging stack traces, you're going to get what people think of as the stack trace itself. So that's just the exception class name, exception message, stack frames, maybe the line of code in each stack frame in some languages. So in addition to that, Rollbar is going to get, in some languages, the values of the local variables. So we can do this in Java and in Python and PHP and touch a few others. So basically what this lets you do is you don't have to kind of go back later and add additional log statements to say, hey, like, oh man, how is it possible that this variable had this value? Or like, how is this thing null, right? Because we can show you, oh yeah, here's the exact value of the parameters and of the variables in that at the time that error happens. So it kind of saves you a lot of time. The other portion of that context is gathering whatever other like application level runtime data that you might want. So in a web application, that's typically going to be the requests, right? What's the URL? Okay. What were the headers? What were the parameters? As well as kind of the runtime environment. So what were the environment variables? What machine is it on? What's the host name? What if it's if it's not a host? What's the container ID? That sort of thing.
Okay, and how does a developer add Rollbar? Is it a fairly similar process for most of the languages? It's some kind of dependency or something like that, or is there an agent?
Yeah, so the most popular way to do it is by adding an SDK into the code. So it basically it's just add a library. So import rollbar.init. That's it.
And then does the developer have to do nothing else, or do you have to sort of add various points in your code to generate errors, or is it a bit of both?
It kind of depends. So we try to make it work as well, really well, just kind of. I'm out of the box, right? So, for example, in Rails, we'll instrument all these things, and just by saying import rollbar.configure, you're going to get a lot of visibility. Some frameworks make that easier or harder to do, so that can vary. There's always the opportunity to send handled errors directly to rollbar, and so that's one approach. The other kind of just approach is Rollbar can also just consume your logs directly. So if you already have great logging going, then you can either hook that up by maybe having Rollbar hook into that framework at the code level, or even just at the system level, just slip in the logs, and we can make sense out of that.
And is that any kind of logging provider, or the language standard ones?
We have there's good integrations with a couple. There's some integrations with, for example, with the Python standard logger, that with some of the frameworks for Java and for JavaScript. I don't recall the exact word language. Yeah.
Okay, but not things like I don't know, and nothing from like the Elastic Stack and those sorts of external. I mean, actually, this kind of leads into maybe a next question I wanted to ask. In that. How does a developer traditionally configure Rollbar with, is it likely that Rollbar is the only tool people use, or are they also using other logging providers, APM providers, metrics databases for?
Yep.
Is it usually deployed amongst a whole suite of other tools as well?
Yeah, no, it's most commonly used as one part of that whole stack, right? So because we're about giving developers visibility to code, there are many more things that a company needs, right? They need visibility to, is the infrastructure running? Is the application running slow or not? And those are problems that are better solved by other tools. So the typical stack will look like something for logging, something for performance and metrics, something for kind of just that base level infrastructure monitoring. So like we'll see people using Rollbar alongside, Datadog, alongside New Relic, alongside Splunk, kind of whatever that stack looks like. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just dig in to, I like to kind of look at the products page and sort of discuss around how, it's getting late here, I'm running out of words.
No problem.
the kind of typical experience that someone would have using a product. So the standard view is, you can see you have a list of projects, environments, also frameworks. I'm guessing that's kind of subsets of languages, or is that something else, the frameworks?
Yeah, so the examples of those in the project are going to be browser.js, Rails, Pyramid, Django,
etc. Time frame, which we'll come back to in a minute, and then levels of error, which I guess is language defined, but also developer defined. And then I think the interesting one where Rollbar really starts to add extra functionality is triaging of errors. So you can create your team and then assign that, and by the looks of it, integrating with other issue tracking tools. So connect up Jira or Trello or Asana or whatever it happens to be, and then it automatically creates an issue there with the relevant kind of stack trace and information in Rollbar linked. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And the root cause analysis, as you mentioned. I think there was one other bit I was interested in going into. Yeah, so the real-time feed aspect, and I would like to dig into a little bit across the time span here. So, how real-time is one question, I suppose.
Yeah, great question. So we aim to have the latency be about 1 second.
Okay, which is mostly enough, I would guess. It very much depends. I think that's good for most people.
it's actually a great topic, because I think how real time is real time depends on what you want to do with the data, right? If you're looking at global economic reporting, real time daily is probably enough, right? If you're looking at errors and you're doing it as a human, probably 1 second is totally great.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, 10 seconds even is probably fine. If you want to do it if you want to do something beyond just a human seeing it, you actually might want faster, right? So if you want to take an action instantly, then going under a second starts to matter. Yeah.
And this interestingly feeds into one of the other features you have about grouping together common errors. So you don't have your view flooded with 50, 100 copies of the same error. They get grouped together, and then you can dig into those should you so wish. I mean, how smart is that grouping? Is it literally just, this is the same error with the same error message from the same thing? Or is there a kind of a level of smartness there to say, we think these are related, they might be, they might not, some kind of configuration around that? Or is it pretty much just duplicates grouped together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we first started Rollbar a long time ago, 8 years ago, we thought that this was a problem that would be relatively easy to solve, right? It's okay, cool. We'll take the errors and kind of just maybe hash the stack trace, maybe strip out some data that you think doesn't matter, and like that'll be good enough for most cases. And it turns out that's definitely better than not doing it, right? It's definitely better than having them all in logs and having to just look through a giant log file and figure out where your errors are. But it's not good enough. You're going to end up with all kinds of duplicates, or if you go the other direction, then you're going to end up with things grouped together that shouldn't have been, which is even worse, because now you can't find the data that you actually need. Like, there should have been an alert and you don't get the alert. So we've invested a lot in the last few years in leveling up how we do this. We actually acquired a company last year working in the space. We've made a lot of strides in the last year and a half since then. So the approach we're taking now is basically about analyzing the data we have, so millions, billions of errors, using some machine learning techniques to essentially identify which features in those errors are predictive about those groups being accurately what a developer would expect. So as a developer, would I think that these two errors are the same or different? That's what we're trying to model with that. So what that looks like is a ever-growing set of rules that understand which parts of the stack traces matter and don't matter. And when you do that kind of at scale, you begin to be able to do this thing where you can make this decision of are these the same or different in a way that matches the way that developers would expect. And when you do that, then you're willing. Then that list becomes accurate, and you're able to say things like, well, let's actually create a ticket in Jira when the error happens. Let's not look at it first.
Okay, so yeah, someone doesn't end up getting 50 of the same error logged because that's. A human is just going to ignore that, probably.
Right. No, exactly. That's the problem, right? Yeah.
As noise, yeah. Okay. And then the other aspect, as far as I remember with Rollbar, I did do some experimentation with it 2 years ago, maybe last year, 2 years ago. I think. Do you also have a feature around being able to kind of look at the impact of changes to then see how errors change over time? Is that something you also do?
Yeah, so that's essentially a data analysis problem, right? So one of the approaches that Rollbar takes is it starts with having good data to analyze, right? So that requires that good accurate grouping. Once you have that, then you can start with some just basic analysis. Like, let's look at the trend of this over time, and like what also happened over time. When did we deploy? When we deployed, did the error rate go up or down? Did this thing start right after a certain deployment? Did it start after a different deployment? We can also do things like looking at what was the code that is in the error and what was the code that was in the deployment. Right. So, did the deploy include commits that change files, and are those files seen in this error? Or for the files that are in this error, what deployment last changed those files? That gives us a good signal about which commit likely contributed to causing that error.
Yeah. Actually, just as you said that, I found the detail on the product page that says link errors and deploys.
Right.
So yeah. And then is there any kind of direct way to roll back from Rollbar, or is it very much go and do that in the tool that's optimized for that?
Yeah, some of those things are coming soon. Right now, the way people will use it is you're going to be watching Rollbar as often as you're deploying. And then what we'll want to do is not so much provide like a rollback button, but kind of integrate directly with the tool that is running a deployment. So if you're using something like Flagger, then we'll want to have Flagger ask Rollbar, hey, should I roll back? And if Rollbar says yes, then Flagger will just roll back for you.
Yeah. And actually, the other thing I just saw here that so maybe it's important for us to dig into a little bit more how you construct an application in Rollbar, because we kind of glossed over the languages and the frameworks, but I'm guessing you can use Rollbar to represent an entire application, which is going to be a mixture of languages and things like that. Because it looks like for JavaScript, and I mean, it's obvious that it would be JavaScript because that's client side, that you can actually see like the path that someone followed to trigger an error, which is quite interesting. How much further can that go? I mean, obviously you're restricted with the language, but can you then see on that JavaScript triggered a Ruby API and then things went wrong there or something like that? Or is it still a little... Are the various components that you represent in Rollbar connected or disconnected from each other? Or does it depend on the application?
Yeah, I mean, so Rollbar can. So the foundation is can we get all the data in? The answer is yes, right? So you can model your application in terms of projects, repos, services, environments like that can all be modeled. Linking the data together between those services is doable, but not supported out of the box in all cases the way you would always want it to. So. But what you definitely can do is kind of pass in, if you can follow through trace IDs, request IDs, SQL. Let's find all the errors that happen for this certain trace ID that you can totally do.
Okay. And so you said Rollbar's been around for 7 or 8 years, did you say?
8 years, yeah.
Okay, and what made you start in the first place? What was the problem you were trying to solve, and why make a company out of it?
Yeah, so my quick story. So I grew up coding as a kid. I came down to California to go to college. Halfway through college, I got drawn into the Facebook app platform,
Okay.
which is the time when if you could figure out how to make an app go viral, it would. And so with some friends, we did that. Reached millions of users within a few weeks, and I was like, all right, cool, let's work on this full time. And so that was a really formative experience for me over the next first kind of 6-9 months and then 4 years of learning how to build software really quickly and experiencing that magic of having an idea in the morning and coding it, shipping it by lunch, and seeing the graphs go up and down, and doing that again in the afternoon, right? And just the incredible kind of speed and creativity that you have as a developer when there's just a direct connection between your keyboard and the user is amazing. So the mission with Rollbar has kind of been to make it possible for every developer to do that in every application, right? So not just in the simplest of our applications, but the most valuable and important business applications. So that's kind of what got us started, and kind of the approach was saying, prior to then, the prevailing idea was that doing a thing like putting errors in a database was totally crazy, right? This is the era of scaling challenges and like let's be as efficient as we can with the data we have. But sometime around 2011, 2012, Amazon started to get more traction with AWS, and we started to think about these things differently. And the idea of saying, hey, let's actually just like put all our errors in a database became reasonable, or at least became conceivably reasonable. So that's the nugget of kind of technology changes that we started from.
Okay, but why make a company? Did you just spot a gap and thought we could fill this, or was it one of these side projects that grew?
It started as a like, it seems like there's something here. We built a prototype in a couple of weeks and had some friends use it, and they were like, this seems pretty cool. So that was enough to get me and Corey, my co-founder, to say, hey, let's work on this full time and let's do it. But it was a while before we really became a proper growing company. We were a team of 2 and then 3 and then we became 6. But that was the first 3.5 years. So it was a pretty small team for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. And so 8 years is, I don't know, crazily a reasonably long time in the kind of era of tech startups. And the space changes a lot. You've been through the increase in popularity of things like containers and microservices and probably had to keep up with that. And you're also in an increasingly crowded space, this kind of monitoring, from rolling your own with just monitoring stacks to other providers doing similar things. How does Rollbar keep relevant and doing what people need? And leading into that, what have you been working on this year?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I think part of the when you talk about the space being really full of players, it just, I think, speaks to how important software has become to the world in the last 8 years. Right. I think, and along with that, how important developers have become to the world. So I mean, I think we were maybe pretty early when we started to work on this, and I think now is kind of just the right time. This year we've been thinking about how do we do more than just give people data, right? So there are lots of companies that give people data, but what people don't want is I mean, they want more than just data. They want to actually do things with it, right? And people are now drowning in data, and there are companies that are kind of designed to help you get less data out of data that you have. I think what developers are, what the market is wanting is it's not about just getting more data. It's getting something that I can actually do. For us, that means helping developers improve code, right? And again, the fundamental problem that you have with code is errors. So how can we help you act on those errors? And to do that, we've had to. It's like what we want to do is we want to let you not just get an alert about, hey, there's a new issue, but we want to, can we, do some steps for you after that. So if when you get the alert, you would roll back, maybe we can automate that for you. If when you get an alert, you would turn off a feature flag, can we automate that for you? Maybe it's an alert and you haven't seen it before and you need to investigate it. Maybe all you would do is create a JIRA ticket. Great, let's automate that for you, right? We're taking stuff out of the process. And all that is about kind of increasing that connection between the developer's brain and the user, which moves us toward that mission. So this year, the big things we've been working on are improving the accuracy of how well we make that decision of, are these two errors the same or different? And by improving that, we're able to we're seeing more and more adoption of some of those interesting things that happen after the alert, right? So we're seeing more customers adopting automatically creating tickets in JIRA or Trello or Asana or wherever. And we're seeing more of them using Rollbar directly in automated ways in their deployment process. So we're seeing them automatically make decisions to stop a canary rollout or those kinds of things. So.
And actually kind of sounds like you're maybe working on more integration points as well. I mean, you're not a ticketing platform, you're not a rollout platform. So focusing on creating the integration points a lot more as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Does that also include, actually there's not so many of the services as there used to be, but the kind of alerting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we see, Rollbar will be used with PagerDuty, with VictorOps, with OpsGenie. It'll be used with Slack. It'll be used with JIRA. It'll be used with Trello, and so on.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, we came into this conversation from a very specific point of recent experiences you had with JIRA Lingo, which sparked my interest because I'm not sure if they're actually from here, but they certainly have a very big office in Berlin. I'm not sure where they're actually from. And I'm guessing the past few months has probably, like many services, pushed a lot more people to them in the past few months. So yeah, I guess in a story like that, how do you help, and how do you as a company also cope with those kind of increases in demands? Helping firstly the clients make sense out of the extra traffic and extra potential noise, but also yourselves. If you're giving metrics every minute across a lot of applications to a lot of customers, that's also a lot of infrastructure you need to keep working as well.
Sure.
And how have you coped with that, and how have you helped others cope with that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with for us. This year historically, I think based on a lot of work that we did pretty early, Rollbar has been an exceptionally stable platform. And this year we kind of ran up against some ceilings, and we had some uncharacteristic struggles in kind of the April through July timeframe. Our team has done an amazing job of coming together to solve those and really level up the base level of the platform. That's for us. That's meant moving to Kubernetes. Really enabling us to scale out a lot more effectively. We also moved some things into Kafka, and I think that those have been kind of the two big moves that have helped us. So yeah.
Okay. And I mean, in terms of those real life stories, the case studies of customers, how much? Obviously, you're going to focus on the positive, but how much realistic kind of impact do you have on the development teams and the business? How much do you actually end up helping?
Yeah, so to talk about, like, because you mentioned Duolingo, I mean, for them specifically, like what they talk about is the speed of development. So can they develop new features faster? Can they solve issues faster? Can they eliminate the back and forth that happens when communicating between teams? So customers are having problems, developers are writing the code. Can we eliminate a lot of the back and forth that happens and figuring those things out? Just getting clarity about what's working and not working. And when you have clarity, it's much easier to make decisions and to act. For some other customers, kind of like how we help them there was a customer recently that integrated Rollbar, and within 7 days they had identified their top 10 issues and fixed them, and they saw their support volume go down by 95%. That's a crazy, crazy
is that
in a short period of time.
Support from customers or internal support?
Support from customers, yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, knowing that a lot of people with something like Duolingo are often on mobile as well, can you offer some of that same level pathways to get to an error on Android and OS as with JavaScript, or do they not offer you access to that kind of information?
Yeah, so for mobile, it's crash reporting, right? So on iOS, so we have an iOS library that can deal with crashes. Those are obviously you're going to get those when the app starts up again next. So it's slightly different. For Android, you're going to get unfound exceptions and so on. Rollbar works with those in a similar way as we do with JavaScript. Yeah.
And there'll be a lot of things like network drop-off and stuff like that, I guess.
Yep.
And I mean, we're rapidly approaching the end of this year. What's the plan for the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so we're as we're now thinking of Rollbar about through the lens of continuously improving code. We're thinking about how can we help developers do more things to be proactive about how they discover and solve errors, and also kind of helping them be a little bit more predictive about how they predict what's going to go wrong, right? So one of the easiest ways to predict what's going to go wrong in production is by looking at what's happening in pre-production. So if you're running in tests, whether that's CI or staging, hooking up Rollbar there as well, so you can say, hey, we have these 8 bugs that are happening here. These are probably going to happen in production if we don't fix them.
Yeah.
So that's a base level. But you can imagine ways that we're working towards, saying, hey, like we see there are a lot of errors in this part of the code. Maybe you should do some work to refactor this because anytime you change this code, you seem to be generating more errors. Or here's a code change that looks like other code changes that have causing problems. Maybe you should make changes to this so you don't cause problems.
That's quite interesting. That starts to potentially help teams build up like a body of knowledge, so new engineers don't just recreate problems that other engineers kind of know about but haven't had a chance to tell anyone about.
It's such a big problem, right? I mean, you fix the same issues over and over and over again.
And recreate them in different places and things like that. Right. I can't remember. I did come across, what was I looking at? There was something like that. I don't know. I can't remember. It was something to do with pull requests at another company where that was a story that kept happening and people kept recreating the same errors because no one understood the code base enough, that kind of thing, And if you have that, actually, that's an interesting question. How far back can you keep error logs?
Yeah, so in principle, any amount of time, right? I mean, It's just data storage. In practice, we the default for our kind of our the main plans is 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
The other kind of consideration there is data storage. So with GDPR and so on, there's a pressure to not keep data longer than you need to.
Yeah. You would like to hope that if an error has been around for 6 months, it has been acted upon, but I would not rely on that.
For sure.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
And is there anything we haven't covered that you want to make sure is mentioned?
No, I think you asked me a lot of great questions. So
okay. Just a good question for people who hear this and like to just go and experiment. You do have a free plan by the looks of it.
Yep.
5K events connect up to so actually probably enough to experiment and get a feel for things before before forking out any cash. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the free plan is meant for developers to use forever on their side projects, right? If it's a hobby project, side project, we want it to be used for free there forever.
I'll actually I do another stream now where I look at like the developer experience of various tools, and I like to try and coincide the podcast with a stream of that. So I'll try and do one and hook it up to one of my side projects. But most of my side projects are static sites, so I don't know how interesting that's going to be. Most of the errors are going to be like broken links, which is not particularly interesting to dig into. It's kind of clear and obvious. I'll think of something to hook it up to, and see what information I can get out of that. But cool, great. Awesome. Thanks very much for your time.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
I hope you enjoyed that interview there with Brian Rue of Rollbar. Now, some updates from me. I have a few, actually. So, here's my lovely website with sort of chinchilla overload here. First, episode 3 of Board Game Jerk. Rebecca and I were joined by Cornelius and Pavel of Nemesis Games, who recently raised over $300,000 for their first ever game, Uprising. I helped edit their manual. Very pleased, very proud that they did so well. And they joined us to discuss random game ideas spat out by the Board Game Jerk bot. So you can enjoy that. That just went live yesterday. D'Exposé this week on Monday was with Strappy, my interview subjects last week. And also the Solo Adventurer on Friday was the first installment of a solo D&D game, Frozen Offerings. And in it I learnt that solo D&D is a lot of management. Coming this Friday will be part 2 of Frozen Offerings, and coming on Monday will be D'Exposé with Rollbar. And what else? Yes, newsletters. I finally started overhauling my newsletter page slowly. I've, for the first time in ages, realized that there was no sign-up box, which is probably why no one was signing up. That's right at the top for the general newsletter. I'll be slowly switching it back to MailChimp, which I'm still setting up. And if you fill in your profile on MailChimp, you'll start getting my topic newsletters, which at the moment are gaming related, ethics in tech, and language, sort of natural language processing, things like that. They will start coming out very soon. I'm still testing, but they are very, very soon. And you can also subscribe to RSS feeds of those particular topics if you would rather instead. And there's the links there as well. Event-wise, I will be speaking at Write the Docs Australia this coming Friday, if you don't have a ticket already. But the videos should be on YouTube soon after. And also, I'll be speaking at API Days Paris next week. I'm not 100% sure of the time, but if you want to see me and other people speak, then grab a ticket. And I hope the videos will be live at some point later. The talks are actually live, so I'm not 100% sure. What else? There'll be episode 3 of Stories About People coming next week. I am just doing some final editing on the audio, so you can look forward to that too. And that was it for the week. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find more about me at chrischinchilla.com. Please subscribe anywhere you hear, watch, read this weekly squeak. Any feedback for me, chrischinchilla.com. And anywhere else you found, you can also leave support too, but also contact. On that note, I will be rolling out some increased support options soon. That's all coming soon. But yes, please rate, review, share, spread the word, spread the love. And until next time, thank you so much for joining.